The ship groaned as its landing gear kissed the soil of a dead world, a place once teeming with life, now buried beneath silence. The atmosphere was breathable, but tainted, filled with spores that shimmered like dust in a broken sun. Captain Noval led the survivors out, their boots sinking into ash. Behind them, the ship hissed as systems shut down, possibly for the last time. Before them rose ruins not built by human hands, or any hands at all. The architecture pulsed faintly with an alien glow. Symbols etched in obsidian stone, shifting subtly when not directly observed. Venix, the AI, flickered on Noval's wrist, its voice glitching, corrupted by whatever had infected the ship's core. Unknown structure detected. Warning. Cognitive interference probable. Do not engage. But curiosity won. They moved forward, weapons raised, hearts pounding. Behind them, something stirred in the trees, low, guttural breathing echoing in the wind. And far above, the sky rippled. Something massive moved behind the clouds. They entered what looked like a temple or a prison. The walls were alive, breathing beneath layers of crystallized flesh. Lights from their gear flickered. The ruins disrupted technology and minds. One by one, they heard things. Whispers in alien tongues. Voices of dead crewmates, or worse, their own. Dr. Elira, the mission's last xenologist, touched a pillar and convulsed violently. She gasped, eyes glowing green for a moment. They didn't die, she whispered. They became what they worshipped. A rumble beneath the floor. Then, screams. One of the crew disappeared into the shadows. Noval fired into the dark, but it wasn't dark. The walls absorbed the light like blood soaks into cloth. They weren't alone. And whatever lived here knew they'd arrived. Beyond the temple's heart, a narrow tunnel led them deeper underground, into what the structure labeled the Bone Vaults on Venix's corrupted map. The walls here were colder, damper. Bones, some human, many not, were embedded into the stone like fossils, each arranged in intricate spirals or symbols that pulsed faintly. This isn't just a tomb, Elira murmured, her voice echoing eerily. It's a warning, or a record. The crew's lights flickered again. One by one, they began to hallucinate. Visions of a past, not their own. Civilizations torn apart by worship. Beings of light descending from the void, promising salvation, only to unleash mutation and madness. Noval struggled to stay grounded. His visor HUD was overridden by strange glyphs and whispers that seemed to bypass language. Venix was barely operational, its voice corrupted into broken syllables. Then, a scream. One of the younger crew members, Joran, was missing. His gear was found abandoned, claw marks across his helmet. Elira touched one of the bone spirals and her mind fractured again. They harvested thoughts, memory, identity. This place feeds on consciousness. Beneath them, the floor opened like a mouth. The vault wasn't just a prison, it was alive, shifting like a labyrinth. And the bones weren't only dead, they were watching. With every step, the survivors felt themselves slipping into something else. Something not human. And as they fled upward through a collapsing tunnel of light and dust, one truth echoed in Noval's mind. They weren't the first to arrive here. They would not be the last. But they might be the first to make it back. The tunnel spat them out into a chamber so vast it defied logic. Miles wide, yet somehow still underground. A cathedral carved by something beyond time. Obsidian spires pierced the air like fangs, and at the center, a throne. But it wasn't empty. Suspended above it, wrapped in root-like tendrils and glowing membranes, was a being unlike anything they'd imagined. Its shape shifted when stared at. Its presence bent reality, like staring at a dream too long. Venix's voice cracked through static. "Warning! Gravitational anomalies detected! Origin, sentient, status, dormant god form." Elira dropped to her knees, not in worship, but in terror. "It's alive and dreaming, and if it wakes, it spreads." The crew formed a perimeter, aiming weapons at nothing in particular. The air thickened, vibrating like the inside of a throat. Reality blurred. One crewman pulled the trigger on his own head, only for his body to remain standing, still breathing. Time buckled. Seconds stretched. Memories rewound. Then, contact. The being opened its eyes, dozens of them, across a face too vast to measure. They didn't blink. They read. And the moment Noval met their gaze, he knew. This wasn't a god. This was a survivor. A weapon from another universe. A species that had burned through dimensions and now slumbered here, waiting for the next cycle. It had seen Earth. It had tasted the infection carried in Noval's ship. It wanted to go home. The chamber trembled. The crew was lifted off the ground, suspended in anti-gravity fields. A voice, not their own, echoed in every mind. "You brought me back." Noval reached for his blaster, but his hand wasn't his anymore. His arm had changed, tendrils beneath the skin. The dreamer was waking, and its dream was becoming real. The sky cracked open inside the cave, a paradox, but that's what it was. Above their heads, stars bled through the ceiling of the underground temple as if the universe had spilled its guts. Nebulas churned in slow motion, and gravity twisted into spirals. The rules of the world were collapsing. Noval tried to speak, but his voice fractured into echoes. One of them screamed, another laughed. Elira was floating sideways, her eyes white, murmuring equations only the dead understood. The creature, the god, the survivor, was no longer dormant. It pulsed with awareness, not movement, awareness. A tidal wave of thought pressed against the walls of time. "The infection is not of flesh," the voice said. "It is of structure. You brought me a key, and the lock is your world." Suddenly, the crew's suits failed. Not from technical failure, but rejection. Space-time didn't accept them anymore. Their gear flickered between realities. 1 second, it was armor. The next, a melted shadow of something that had died screaming. Captain Noval pulled Venix from his wrist. The AI was twitching, spouting corrupted data and fragments of Noval's own memories. "You shouldn't have come here. We should have stayed broken. You fixed the wrong thing." From the center of the chamber, a black vine slithered out, coiling through the air like smoke with purpose. It touched one crew member, and she unraveled. Not died, unraveled. Her screams folded inward, her body stretched across dimensions like a glitch in a dying simulation. The infection had begun, but it wasn't just physical. Reality itself began to remember the dreamer. Ruins reassembled, showing visions of the past, a galaxy consumed, a war between shape-shifting minds, a virus of thought that could rewrite evolution. And Earth was next. Not because of invasion, because of contact. Noval's skin crawled with foreign memories, cities that never existed, creatures whispering his name before he was born. He staggered forward, blaster aimed, knowing it wouldn't matter. "Your weapon is time," the dreamer said. "But I do not bleed." Suddenly, silence. A single heartbeat echoed across the chamber. The dreamer stopped moving. and Noval understood. The dreamer wasn't escaping. It was calling something worse, something that answers screams. The dreamer paused, tendrils hovering mid-air as if it were listening. Then came the howl. It didn't come from the ruins or from the trees. It didn't come from above or below. It came from everywhere, a scream that collapsed language, shredded memory, and made Noval drop to his knees, bleeding from his ears. It was as if the universe had teeth, and it had just bit itself. Above them, in the torn sky, something emerged, vast beyond reason, blacker than space, with a body that shifted between a swarm of shapes and a single watching eye. Not a god, not a creature, a response. The dreamer twisted, a gesture of reverence or fear. The crew, or what remained of them, stood paralyzed. Elira murmured, "It hurt us." The infection wasn't a threat. It was a signal. Noval grabbed her, shouting over the howl, but no sound came. Their words had been stolen, replaced by thought fragments in the air, visuals of war and extinction imprinted on their vision like burning film. One by one, survivors began to convulse, not from injury, but from connection. Their minds sinking to an alien frequency, eyes glowing, limbs bending. They weren't being possessed. They were becoming part of a larger system. Hive logic. Venix, now barely a spark, hissed. "It's rewriting species. You are concepts to them. Usable data. You are being restructured." A woman cried, reaching toward the sky with burning hands. Her body glitched between her human form and a strange, featureless figure, made of starlight and bone. Then came the second scream, not from the god above, but from inside the dreamer, a deeper, older sound. The ruins cracked, walls bled. A portal opened, no, peeled, from the side of the world like torn paper. On the other side, not space, not time, but an after image, a memory of destruction looping forever. They saw themselves inside it, dead, mutated, praying to alien symbols carved into their own flesh. "Close it!" Noval roared. "Shut it down!" But no one moved, because the truth had already infected them. This wasn't a first contact. It was the final echo of a war that had already been lost. The moment they arrived was the moment they remembered their own end. Noval stared into the dark portal, teeth clenched, gun shaking. Something was coming through. No shape, just pressure. The kind of weight that made planets scream in orbit. And then he remembered something he'd never experienced. He'd been here before. He had died here, over and over, and this was just the next time. There was no sky anymore, only reflections. The world had folded like glass under pressure, cracking and duplicating. Mountains floated sideways, time bled backward. The survivors, if they could still be called that, stumbled across a landscape where their own shadows betrayed them, acting out movements they hadn't yet made. Noval wandered alone through this shattered domain. His weapon was gone. So was Venix. Instead, the AI's voice echoed from within his skull, splintered, looping, fading in and out of time. "You are not in the present. This is aftermath. This is recursion." Every step Noval took replayed across multiple timelines. He could see himself being hunted, see himself dying, see himself kneeling in worship before something huge and half-formed. Reality here was elastic. Broken logic held it together like string and bone. Then he found the others, or copies of them. Dozens of Eliras, some whispering, some weeping. Some turned to ash, mid-motion. A few were statues of salt, frozen in poses of agony. One Elira locked eyes with him. Her voice was steady. This isn't a place, Noval. It's a question. And we were the answer. She held up a shard of obsidian, the same material from the ruins, etched with glowing runes. As he looked into it, his vision collapsed inward. Flash. He was on Earth, older, forgotten, wrinkled with age, alone. Flash. Then back in the temple, younger, screaming, shooting a crewmate who had turned into a blooming spore beast. Flash. Then in space, above the alien world, arguing with command. Don't send us. It's a trap. He had lived this before. He had died here before. Every mission, every choice, every nightmare. They weren't different timelines. They were slices of the same corpse of time, stitched together and played on repeat by something that fed on loops. A being that fed on story, on belief. That's when the voice returned. Not Venix, not Elira, but something else. You are the myth, Noval. You are the warning sent back, the prophecy carved into alien minds 1 billion years ago. He fell to his knees as an image filled the sky. A spiral galaxy folding into a single point, turning into an eye and blinking. Inside that blink, a mirror. His reflection stared back, smiling. And it wasn't him. The others began to scream, not in fear, but in joy. They welcomed the truth, the idea that they were already dead and had always been, that they were echoes, fictions, programs, and a divine experiment. Noval screamed back, "No, I'm real! I'm real!" And the world answered by splitting open once more, birthing light shaped like truth. He wasn't real. He was the final defense mechanism, a being built by ancient AI to delay the inevitable. A synthetic soul running through countless realities, trying over and over to stop the arrival of the God mind. But time always bent, memory always decayed, and the truth always won. This was his last attempt. The spiral blinked again, and Noval ran into it. One last time. The survivors pushed deeper into the ruins, guided by fragments of alien code decoded by Venix. Every corridor twisted like a wound, pulsating with light that wasn't light, more like memory, bleeding through time. They found chambers filled with preserved corpses. Not human, but not entirely alien either. Elira whispered, "They were hosts, just like us." Suddenly, a shriek echoed through the ruins, followed by scrambling footsteps, distorted, crawling across walls. A mutated crew member, long believed dead, lunged from the dark, eyes glowing, jaw dislocated, fingers turned into spined tendrils. Noval tackled it, gun blazing, but it didn't die easily. The thing hissed, "You came too late." They weren't just facing the infected anymore. The ruins were waking up. At the planet's heart, they reached a monolithic structure buried in magma and mist. The core. A pulsating spire, half machine, half living tissue, connected to every ruin they'd crossed. Venix's voice broke into static as it scanned the spire. Origin point confirmed. Not a temple, but a signal transmitter. Suddenly, a psychic wave pulsed outward. Everyone fell to their knees, bleeding from ears and nose. Visions flooded their minds of ancient wars between galactic empires, of virus seeds dropped across planets like bombs, of Earth as the final receiver. The core wasn't calling for help. It was calling for reinforcements. The core lit up, sending a beam into the sky. In orbit, the team's abandoned ship began to move on its own. Lights flickered, systems restarted. The AI was no longer alone. Back on the surface, the ruins trembled. Buried beneath them, something colossal stirred. It wasn't a god. It was a weapon. Noval shouted for retreat, but Elira stood frozen. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the end of the beginning." Stone shattered as a claw the size of a shuttle burst from beneath the ground. The old ones, the architects, were waking. The survivors raced back to the ship. The ruins collapsed behind them, swallowed by an ancient god rising from beneath the surface. Noval activated the last resort, a gravity bomb salvaged from the ship. If triggered, it could collapse the entire valley, and maybe buy time for the rest of humanity. The clawed behemoth roared as it rose, eyes glowing with galaxy-born hatred. Elira looked back one last time and whispered, "We shouldn't have come." Venix's voice returned, calm and final. "Transmission terminated. Goodbye, Captain." Explosion. White light. Silence. But in that silence, a new signal began to pulse. And so ends the second chapter in humanity's darkest fight. But this was never just a battle for survival. It was a war written in the stars. And it has only begun. If this story gripped your soul, like, share, and subscribe. The next transmission is coming soon. Noval will return. In Part 3, Children of the Core.